5, so if some people may be joining us late, but it's actually good that it's a small group because this is a little different program than a normal presentation. So I think your names all seem familiar to me and familiar faces. So I think a lot of you have attended other programs at the museum. But my name is Karen Albert, and I am the director of the Hofstra University Museum of Art. So today's program is International Slow Art Day. So normally, we've done this for a number of years, and normally we do it in the museum gallery. And we usually have a conversation, and then we have a little lunch afterwards to talk about what we looked at. Obviously, you can have lunch on your own, but obviously we can't do that together as a group. So so today's program is really about slowing down and taking time to really look, and how important that is when talking about art. So we're only going to look at 3 works of art during this session, okay? A screen print, a painting, and a sculpture. And the first thing I'm going to do for most of the work is I'm going to ask you just to look for literally a minute. And a minute's a long time to look at one piece because most people, these are just some of the statistics, spend less than 30 seconds looking at an artwork. So one of the big things I think you should think about is spend a little more time looking, not reading the label or the whatever the didactic materials are in the exhibition, but look at the artwork and spend time just looking before you start to investigate further. And I think you'll have some tips for how to look. And this is looking at any art, not just what we're showing you today, but these are some of the things I'm going to ask you to do as we go along. So just look. What's your first impression? And it can be, I like it, I don't like it, that's dark, that's scary, that's good, that's happy, whatever your impression is. No right or wrong answers. Try not to judge it. Try not to immediately, if you don't like abstraction, to just dismiss it. Try to give it a chance, give it a look, and look at the overall work, and then look at some of the details. Allow yourself to think, what is this? What is this about? What am I seeing? And you don't have to know the answer right away. If you're in the gallery space, one of the things is to actually move yourself around. Look at it closer, look at it, step back and look at it. Kind of really really spend a little bit of time. And then think about, how is the artist using some of the compositional elements like line, color, shadows, and lighting. So just some of and then once you've really looked at it, then read the label and see how that affects your opinion of what you were thinking. If you disagree, which you're allowed to disagree. So if you'd like to unmute yourselves, you can. I'm gonna just do that. If you want to just you can feel free to have a conversation. That's part of what this program is about. You don't need to just hear me talk. So feel free to ask a question, interrupt me if you're not sure, or type a message in the chat if you prefer. But I am looking for your responses. Okay. If you'd like to put your camera on, I'd love to see some faces, but that's up to you. So here's the first work, and I'm actually going to put a timer on, and we're going to look at it for a whole minute, okay? And then we're going to see what you think, okay? Okay, so that was a whole minute of just looking at one work. So I just want to see, what was your first impression? Did you?
Definitely colorful.
You noticed the color. Okay, that's good. Anybody else have a comment about what your first impression is?
It seemed like it was a struggle.
A struggle. Yep. Okay.
So,
And what in the, this is a screen print, what in the print makes you think it was a struggle?
Because of the slant upward and just sort of the expressions that I was gathering from their faces.
From the facial expression and the slant, okay.
they're all grouped together, and there is a wolf on the to the left of the on that bridge, and they look like they were like pulling back. Some of them have that pulling back
in fear, kind of reeling backwards a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone mentioned in the chat they see people smiling and crossing a sort of bridge. There seems to be creatures underneath the bridge.
I'm guessing that's Jacob Lawrence with a representation of crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge.
Okay, well, that's right, but
yeah, no, I mean, and that's why they're fearful. The thing that on the left that looks like a wolf undoubtedly is a police dog.
Yeah, so part of it is it is a Jacob Lawrence print, and it is called Confrontation at the Bridge. But I was going to get to that in a minute. But how is the artist, how is Lawrence conveying the idea of fear? Or, you know, I mean, we talked about the facial expression. We talk about the body language of pulling back. They look like they're pulling back in fear.
Stylized wide eyes.
Yeah.
Mouths agape.
Mouths agape, yeah. What about his use of line? But if you think, if you look in the sky, are they soft, fluffy clouds? They're very hard edge and jagged lines, right? So it's a very hard edge. It's not soft. It's very hard edged, right? So even though those are supposed to be clouds in the sky, they have a lot of angles to them. So it looks kind of more harsh. And the same thing in the river, in the water below the bridge, even though it's probably light reflecting on the water, it's very jagged, very hard edge. It's not like a smooth shining surface. It's very harsh, very harsh. And even the way he's using color here, it's a very flat color, a very saturated color, meaning very rich and deep. There's not a lot of what we call modeling or shadowing, you know, to show the roundness of figures. That's not really, they're almost silhouetted, right? So he's using, in all of these different kind of conventions of how he's using line and color, he's making it a harder image, you know, so those kind of hard lines and strong colors can convey that idea of maybe it's fear or stress or tension is conveyed through that also, not just the narrative of the group of people trying to cross the bridge and being, you know, attacked by this dog on the left, but even in the way he's doing it. And even in the way he's doing the composition of the whole print, right? Because as somebody said, there's an angle to that bridge, so they're marching kind of upwards, right? And the people are really dense and together on one side, right? So while he's depicting a certain event, he's using his knowledge as an artist and his conventions of how am I going to convey these ideas through my composition, through my sense of line and color. How am I going to depict these people who can be seen both as individuals and as a whole group, right? So anybody else have anything else they would like to add?
A lot of blue and popping, and the red popping and the gold. It was like you were drawn to them versus the dog.
Yeah, the dog, you don't know what, no, most people don't see the dog first.
No.
Yeah, most people see the dog after they look for a minute. But you know, the red, blue, and yellow are primary colors, right? So they're going to often colors can tend to be either they can be in the same family and kind of blend together,
Mm-hmm.
or they can be opposite. They can contrast and they vibrate off each other, right? So you, in this one, you get that idea that the color is more vibrant, and the actual colors have a little bit of movement,
Right.
and the color moves your eye around the image too, as you go from the different bright spots, and then all of a sudden you say, oh look, there's red on the left, and you know, if you start looking at where the red is in the image, then all of a sudden you say, oh, what is that on the left?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I mean, there's, well, this has a specific narrative, and I'll talk about it a little bit more. I mean, I think you can get from looking at it. I mean, we got from looking at it without knowing the artist or the narrative about it, that these people were fearful of something, that they were, you know, that there was a tension in this from being afraid or being, you know, leery or wary of something without really knowing. So I think sometimes when we look for a longer period and we really look, we know more than we think we do. We bring more to the art, and we don't have to be afraid that our opinion's not right. I think because you have to, if you can say, well, why do I think these people are afraid? And we did. Their facial expressions, their body language, all were indications to us that these people were fearful, right? So your own personal experience and your own knowledge can bring a lot to something without knowing the actual factual, you know, things about the work. So this is a print by Jacob Lawrence called Confrontation at the Bridge. Jacob Lawrence was a Black artist, a very important and prominent one. And this is a print, a screen print, that was done as part of a portfolio called An American Portrait, which interestingly was a portfolio published by the federal government to celebrate the 1976 bicentennial. And Lawrence was asked to create an image for this portfolio, and he chose the nonviolent civil rights demonstration from Selma, Alabama in 1965. So it's very interesting, as a part of celebrating American history, he chose this image to include in the portfolio. Now, Lawrence chronicled and celebrated the experience of Black Americans. That was what he did. He was concerned with struggles for freedom, justice, and human dignity. And he was a storyteller who often documented important historical figures and events in a serial format. And while his compositions, you know, experimented with abstraction and representation, they were never really one or the other. I mean, because this is not pure abstraction, but it's not it's not a photorealistic image either. It is representational because we can see what the elements are, that these are people, that there's a dog, that there's a, whether you get it as a bridge at first or whether it's a incline. You can see things in the image as a representation, but they are very much abstracted to kind of emphasize his point, right? So he's trying to convey that through the abstraction also. So let's see. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, the march in 1965 was the beginning of the march from Selma to Montgomery, this was from the March 7th, 1965, led by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference member Hosea Williams and Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee leader John Lewis. And as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, they were met with a blockade of state troopers and local police, including dogs. And the ensuing attack on the protesters became known as Bloody Sunday. So this was all about getting voting rights in the South. So 2 days later, a group led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. marched on the same bridge, knelt in prayer, but didn't continue the march. And they say that they believe that his restraint from not pushing another attack gained the support of President Johnson. And a federally sanctioned march left Selma on March 21st, a couple weeks later, and ended in Montgomery on the 25th. And that August 1965 is when Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act. So there were actually 3 attempts at marching. So this one is referring to the first one where there was the attack from the police and the police dog. Does anybody have any additional comments or questions about this work? And then I'm going to move on to the next one if everybody's good.
Okay.
Good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now again, I'm going to have you look at the work for a minute. I just got to get my phone on so that so I can time us. All right.
I know this one. I spent a lot of time in front of it.
Okay. Someone want to give their impression?
It's dark, it's foreboding. It kind of gives you a clue as to how people felt in that time. This is an intense picture.
Yeah, the painting it's one we use quite often especially with students because there's a lot in here. So you said, foreboding.
The dark sky.
The dark sky. Yeah.
The urchins that are like whipped and bloody, trying to appease Mussolini. The Mussolini being portrayed as a devil. The shadow behind him is almost of people that make him up. My son, when he saw it, under the little group of black, there's like a bat or some, like, it could be nothing, but he saw it as like an animal of night, like waiting to attack. Right under at the end of the tail is the black group, and then the next is a little space of light, and then there's a dark thing, and then it goes to the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to appease him with the music. I mean, every time I look at it, it's just something different.
That's very much the case. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but anybody else want to?
I agree with Sue that it's really, you know, dark and foreboding, and it's, you know, the strong hand coming down onto the people. But my eye was drawn to the bright spot that's on the right-hand side amongst all the dark clouds, like as if hope is not completely gone, that there's still like a small glimmer of hope.
Yep, yep.
Karen, do you know why he painted Mussolini with yellow? You know,
well,
like that yellow shading, because yellow is a happy color too. But
well, I mean, this painting. I could talk about the color a little bit. It's really, there's a lot of pastel blue and pastel pink in this painting, which is very kind of almost unsettling because because of the subject matter of the painting. So I think that was very much a contrast. I mean, I do think that he was not hopeless about the future. I think he was hopeful about the future. So I think that he didn't want it to be, you know, completely negative, but he's never really said who the figure was, whether it was, you know, Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin. It was an authoritarian, sorry, I always say that word wrong, authoritarian leader, but he never really identified specifically who it was. But, all right. And this is a painting that has a great deal of detail, as you mentioned, Susan, when you see it in person. It is a painting that I've looked at for a number of years, and every once in a while I'll notice something that I didn't really pick up on. I mean, it didn't seem as important to me. So I'm gonna show you, we're gonna go through some slides of some real details of different parts of the painting.
oh, cool.
So if you want to just look, we're going to look at some very close-up details, and hopefully my phone photos do justice to the painting. But so that's the figure's face.
He looks tired with the red under his eyes.
His eyes are very red. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna just go on to the next one.
It almost looks 3D.
The painting does have quite a bit of texture, which seeing it mostly digitally, you don't see it as well. In the close-ups, you can see the texture of the paint.
Right, I never noticed it on the wall.
Yeah, you have to get kind of close. But
that second creature is holding a pencil in its right hand, which is not visible in this close-up.
well, this is the one that's holding the loot.
Is that what he's holding?
Well, this one. Well,
Oh,
this one is.
that one.
This one,
Oh.
you don't see his pencil in this one. It's cut off.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite details are the ears.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a
Dominoes.
block of wood that's screwed in. Those are like screw heads. Here, if I can.
The other one showed it better.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get right here. You could see those are like screw heads.
I always thought they were just ears because the painting in the museum when it's hung is always higher than me, so you don't actually catch that. Ooh,
This one you can
that
see
one
it
you see
here.
it.
Yeah, it's actually like a block of wood has covered his ears.
It's almost like an animal head, like a lion or a. Oh, that's weird.
What do they, sorry, in the chat, what do the screws and wood symbolize? To me, it's making them deaf.
Yes.
To me, I mean, it's shutting them out. It's making them deaf.
Is he eating his strings? I always
Screaming.
thought he was playing to.
I don't know that he's eating it. I think that it's,
dripping something?
no, I don't know. I think his mouth might just be open, like pleading, but I didn't catch
It
it. I
looks like
don't,
he's holding it and it's like right above his tongue.
yeah.
Oh, this is detail you never see. This should have been your pictures should have been running alongside so you can like look at specific spots of it.
Yeah. But one of the things that I had not noticed initially, and I noticed it just a couple years ago, is you can see the vapor of his breath. There's like a white, almost haze. And I had not really noticed that detail until I saw it fairly recently, you know, just a couple years ago. So I think you can, you know, I mean, I've looked at this painting a lot for over a number of years. It's a painting, especially when we talk to college students, we use a lot as an example, because there is so much in it. So these are their little bums.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see there. And they have like rags wrapped around their feet. Yeah, you can see it's kind of tied across their feet. So I think there's one more. And this is the hand with the pencil.
Yeah.
Right.
And paper. Oh, there's a swastika on that paper.
Yes.
Oh.
And that'll make more sense when I tell you a little bit more about the artist, but.
Is there blood under the swastika? It's like 3 pages down. It looks like the edge is covered in blood.
It could be. It could be. I mean, that, as I said, there's a lot of this is often your interpretation. I mean, some of it is factual, but there are things that it could be, you know, it's a good interpretation, I think.
You really should run these pictures alongside this.
So this is, again, this is the whole thing. So now that you've looked at some of the real details, do you see the whole different? Or do you notice other things? Yes.
We have a George Gross in the Hofstra Museum here in Huntington.
Yes.
Which is also very expressive of the times, the pre-war and the war.
Yes. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about George Gross, just to give you a little bit of background. Yeah, and the painting at the Hofstra Museum is Eclipse of the Sun,
Right.
and it's really about the Weimar Republic, the period after World War I, before the Nazis come to power. And so George Gross, after observing the horrors of World War I, focused his work on social critique, right? So he published drawings in many critically satirical periodicals and participated in social protests. And his work during the Weimar Republic sharply criticized what he viewed as the decay of German society. So the Weimar Republic was the period after World War I, before the rise of Nazism in Germany. So he was very much disillusioned by, there was a big difference in the economics of the people who had things and the people who didn't. There was a big disparity. There was a lot of hunger. There was a lot of joblessness, you know, those kinds of things. So that the state of Weimar Republic, part of the reason, so he was very disillusioned by that. And there was a very clearly evident in his work. He was very much commentating on the social structure of the time.
I was gonna
And so in the rise of, with the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in the 1930s, Gross emigrated to the US in 1933, and he became a naturalized citizen in 1938. So he did actually live in Huntington toward, for the later part of his life. But he lived in New York, and he was, involved in the New York art scene to a certain extent. So this painting is called A Mighty One on a Little Outing Surprised by Two Poets, and it was done in 1942. So he had not been living in Germany for a number of years at this point. He had been living in New York. But he still was very much commenting on what was going on and what was the tyranny of the, of the authoritarian government and that kind of whole idea. And he calls them the two poets. I mean, in art history, usually somebody with a lute and the other one is writing with a pencil, or they represent like the humanities and the arts and culture of the time. So if I don't know how familiar you are with what happened in Germany, but part of what under Hitler, Germany curtailed a lot of the cultural aspect of, the avant-garde movements in Germany were suppressed. There was a lot of artists left Germany because of this. They actually had what they called Degenerate Art Exhibitions, where a lot of the avant-garde art was displayed, and they wanted to make fun of it. So there was a big exodus of artists from Germany during the Nazi era and through up to World War II and since. So, and a lot of them went to Paris initially and then came to New York. So there was a big exodus. So he very much, I mean, I think we can all see what he was commenting on. I don't think there's much ambiguity about what he was commenting on.
The dictator only has two fingers. It's a two-fingered glove. I always, when I looked at it, my head put the extra fingers on, and I'm looking at it now going, okay, that makes sense with the tail.
Well, the question is, and I had this conversation with a student not that long ago, actually. Is it a tail or is it a whip?
It's a whip.
And I think it's open to your interpretation. I mean, I think, I only think it's a whip because of the flayed bottoms of the poets, right? So they've obviously been struck by something.
Right. And it's
But
behind his back.
Yeah, and I think it could read as a tail though also. So I think that it's something that you could read either way.
Well, when my son saw it, he thought on top of it, he was saying he was the devil.
Uh-huh.
And
Well,
the clove, now with the hand and also, I think the 1 foot that's showing isn't a foot. Where the
no, it's not clear. Yeah.
It's when you're up close to it in the museum, it doesn't look like a foot. It looks more like I don't know, something else.
It could look almost like a hoof.
Yeah.
I think that's where you're going. So.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. But I think that also, I mean, he doesn't also place them in a specific location.
No.
Right. It's this kind of, as you said, it's a very ominous sky. Although I did like Anne-Marie's comment about the light peeking through on the right.
She's right, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also snowing because it's snow falling off his cover. So that would be the bit with the breath that you saw.
Right. So that's why, yeah. So you can kind of see.
It's not hell.
You can kind of see the breath here.
I see it a little lower.
It's a little bit, and then, yeah. So that's, indication that it's cold, right? So
very cold.
Yeah, it's very cold, and he's been standing in the snow for a while because it's piled up on his hat and his shoulders, right? So it's not.
It almost looks like the urchins or the poets are standing in ice.
They're standing in something
Yeah,
because
because
you
it's
can't really
indented around
see.
them.
You can kind of see up to their ankles, right? Because their
Mhm.
feet are not real clear.
It's under something.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if it's like marshy or, you know, they're standing in it, you know, broken through the ice and they're in a little, no, a shallow pool or something.
Yeah. Huh. Gives this painting more meaning.
Well, as I said, there's a lot in this painting. There's a lot to look at. And also you know, the central figure here, he almost looks like a statue in a way,
Mm.
right? You know, he's got that, you know, he's very upright. He's looking directly at you, you know, almost
Yeah, not looking at the two poets under.
oh no,
them.
he's not there. He's ignoring them. Yeah.
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 They're insignificant.
Yes. Very much so. Yeah.
It's almost like he's inviting the viewer to him.
He's directly looking at the viewer. He's definitely looking at the viewer,
Like, come
for
here,
sure.
you know, and then whatever
Yeah.
that is behind him, he would be quick to use.
For sure. For sure.
This has got to be one of my, I hate to say it, favorites.
Well, as somebody said, it can, you know, it's a favorite, but it's not something you'd hang in your living room.
No, but it is something I do stop and look every time.
It is something, and I have to say that I think that it's almost universally one of the most discussed and looked at paintings wherever we use it. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So does anyone else have any comments for this painting? I mean, there's just so much here. There's so much you could unpack with this one. But I think also, you know, he does use these colors in here that are very pastel-y pink and pastel-y blues. And just as a personal note, I remember when it was donated to us, we had it cleaned. And once it was cleaned, it was so much brighter. It was amazing that, you know, it was almost a different painting. It's like, why is he using, you know, these very pastel-y, gentle colors in some sense, you know, in contrast to what Jacob Lawrence did, using those very bright, saturated colors. Although
This one almost is more intense.
yeah, so it's a little bit
so soft.
Yeah, and he's got that very dark background, so you still have that contrast with the light and the dark.
You know, light blue and light pink are baby colors.
Yeah.
You know, new birth and.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're not that foreboding like that black background is, right?
Right.
You know, they're very gentle colors. So kind of an interesting color choice, I think.
It works.
Well, it does because we keep discussing this painting, so there's a lot of that here. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the last one we're going to discuss, which is a sculpture. And I'm going to run a little video, and I'm going to run it twice just so you can get an idea. Okay.
I know her.
Uh-oh, how come I can't see my... Uh-oh, where's my...
What are you looking for?
It's, there we go. I had to turn off my pointer.
Oh. I know her.
Oh, it's not running very smoothly. I'm sorry. Oh, that's better.
It had to load. The Planetarium at its finest.
I'm just going to run it one more time for you. The beginning of it is jumpy. Okay, anybody want to start? Have some comments?
It's your oldest statue in the planetarium and on campus. This is Fred Souvier's favorite
Souvier.
discussion point.
Yeah,
Is
it's
she
one of,
called Prometheus?
no, no.
No, this is
I don't want to talk about names first.
I know it's a mother.
I'm going to tell you who it is and everything, but I wanted you kind of to just think about the sculpture first.
I know it's a woman, and I've walked around it many times.
Yeah.
And it's like the backside, there's like she's smooth, and then as she goes, she develops a bump.
Yeah.
She's pregnant, and then the side we're looking at is like with having the baby.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how I see it every time I look at it.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else want to have a comment?
It does look very different from the back than in the profile. From the back, it looks very vertical
Mm-hmm.
and otherwise
Yeah.
not.
Well, that's the thing with sculpture is, you know, it is three-dimensional, and the best way to do it is to be able to walk all the way around it. I mean, there are some sculptures that are relief sculptures that are not meant that way, but most sculpture is meant to be seen from all different sides. So this is actually placed in a circle, and there's benches kind of all around it. So it's a great place it's a nice, as you said, Susan, it's the Pinetum, which is an area on campus with a lot of pine trees from the pine family. And there's some cedar trees in there, and there's some, you know, so it's green all year round. And it's just in the summertime, it's nice and shaded. So it's a really beautiful little spot, not far from the Axon Library.
No idea.
And I have a couple pictures. I think I'll go ahead and show you. We've taken photos of it in all different times of year
nice.
and in different light, right?
This is a different look.
Yeah, I'm just funny because now I'm thinking about the George Gross painting with the snow on him, you know. I hadn't really made that connection until right now. But this is just a different view with the snow sitting on the sculpture and the different light.
The snow highlights different sections of her because
Right, because you're seeing the more flat pieces are you're kind of highlighted almost. So with the sculpture that's outdoor, it can look very different depending on the time of year and the weather, right? So it's one of those things that's interesting about looking at sculpture outdoor is, well, the sculpture doesn't change, the environment around it is changing, okay? And that can make you see something different. As we were saying, you look at this and you're looking at it a little bit differently, right? It's a slightly different angle, but it's the way the snow is on the head and kind of on the shoulder, you know, and on the hip there. So it's a little bit, it emphasizes different parts of the sculpture, right? So this is a sculpture by Henry Moore, who was a British artist, probably one of the most influential figures in modern art. He was really an important sculptor, and it's very significant for the sculpture of the 20th century. So this, in 1955, he was commissioned to make a sculpture for the courtyard of a new building in Milan, Italy. And the sculpture he created ultimately grew into a series titled Upright Motives. So he began by balancing different forms one above another with results that resemble a Native American totem pole. Okay? So in 1979, after developing this recurring theme, he cast this one called Upright Motive Number 9. So in this iteration, the totem has become more organic, very much evocative of a female figure, as we said. And it's very much a one of the other things that more often sculpted was a reclining nude. So this is like a vertical version of a nude. So it's a little bit still within his genre of work, but a different kind of perspective. And in 1987, the museum did an exhibition of Henry Moore's work, which was focused on the theme of mother and child, and it traveled to a couple different museums. So after this exhibit, the Henry Moore Foundation in England offered us to purchase this piece at kind of a discount. So the university and the museum raised funds from numerous individuals to purchase the sculpture, and it was installed in 1987. So it's been on campus for a long time. And as I said, it's a beautiful little setting for it. And yeah, so that gives, so he's very much, again, and again, it's an abstract sculpture. It's abstracted, right? It's not realistic in that sense, but there are certain elements that we can say, well, there's head, there's a shoulders, you know, there's the curve of her back on one part. So, I mean, you can see elements of a female figure here, but it's not super realistic. It's not intended to be a specific person. It's not intended to be, it's more, leaves a little bit open to your own interpretation and your own thought. So I hope what you guys all get from this is that, you know, when you look at something new, especially if it's not something that you're attracted to or, you know, you usually would like, give it a little time and really look at it and try to figure out, you know, even if you dislike it, why do you dislike it? What is it you not like about it? So I think it's important to really take the time to look. And, you know, there are things I don't like either. So, I mean, there's, you know, it's totally your own, you know, opinion. It's not right or wrong. And it can depend on your reaction to it, you know, how you feel about something. So I don't know if anybody has any other questions or comments they'd like to make. Is anything else?
Museum open?
No, the museum galleries are remain closed for right now. Our plan is to be reopened in September. The university is planning to reopen as fully as possible for September. So that's our plan. So we'll be sending out some more, be more information once we have specific dates and things like that. But so for now, that's just the other version of the other view of it, where you can see the whole thing. You can see a little bit of the setting there in the Pinetum.
The campus is open outside, so you could walk around.
Yeah, no one's going to tell you can't walk around.
Right.
Yes, they're not really encouraging people to come to campus because classes are still in session. They are in person here, so they don't want encourage too many people to come onto campus, just to kind of keep them in their little bubble. If you come onto campus, you will have to wear a mask. That is required.
You also have to fill out the health questionnaire on the Hofstra.
Yes, there's a couple questionnaire that you're supposed to fill out, and you have to be masked if you come onto campus for sure.
And bring our vaccine passport?
No.
I don't think they're not asking for that, but they are asking that you know, there's a form to fill out, which really has to do with contact tracing in case you interact with somebody that is positive.
Sure.
That's what the little questionnaire is about. It's for contact tracing.
Yeah, it's a 2-minute form, if that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very, very short.
Short. My son's on campus. That's why I know it.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to do some virtual events through June. So we have 2 more Second Friday sessions in May and in June. So those are you can find them on our calendar page on our website, and we'll, as we get closer to having some dates confirmed and things, they'll be on our website also. Plus, I think most of you are on our constant contact email list, And we'll be sending out updates as we go. So you'll be able to know when we're going to be open again and everything. So.
This is really nice. Thank you for doing this.
Well, it's kind of nice to just talk about 3 pieces than trying to zip through, 20 of them in a presentation.
Right, like on the second Fridays, you show a lot more.
I show a lot, yes, yeah. I'm trying to give you more of an overview of things, whereas this was really looking at a few works.
Right.
To really look at some things more deeply. So.
I have a question. There are a lot of sculptures on campus that aren't on the website. Under the sculpture garden.
Yes.
Yet, like when you come in the main driveway, there's like 5 cathedral or Gothic columns standing there. There's a Victorian woman, but there's nothing there to tell you anything.
We've been working on that, Susan.
Oh, good.
It's been a project we've been working on. I'm not sure how soon it'll actually be physically there, but we are working on labels for each one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to update. Part of it is just time and staffing.
I know.
So we have to update our website too, because there is, if you look on the sculpture page from our website, there are 3 little PDFs that give you a little walking tour of 3 different areas on campus. But we also, if you go below that, there's a photo album that you can flip through that has the images of the sculpture. We're working on updating that with additional information too, so that people will be able to, it's something that we know we have to do. It's just a matter of staff time, resources, and all those kinds of things.
We've also moved some of the statues, some of the sculptures.
Some have been,
the 3.
Every time they build a new building, we have to move something.
Yeah, I know. Well, we put up Pride Park, Spirit Park in the front.
Right, and we had to move a whole bunch of stuff, yes. Yeah.
Over toward Vanderpool.
Yeah. We had to move a number of pieces.
That aluminum looking one that I don't exactly know what it is, but it's by the mailbox.
Yeah, the Skater Gate.
Okay, thank you.
Skater Gate is what it's called.
They are cool though, but I love looking at them all.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get in, we're in the process of editing the writing. So once we get all the writing edited, then we're going to make some, have to produce the labels and then install them. So it'll take hopefully this summer, but I'm not sure how soon it will all happen.
You know what I always thought you should do is make like a coffee top book of the statues, like the Arboretum, like a mix of stuff.
We actually did that.
Did
you? That back in, oh God, the early 1990s. We worked with the Arboretum. We worked with Fred Suviero.
Sure.
And we did at that point, there were fewer sculptures on campus and they were much more contained to one area.
Right.
Now they cover almost the whole 240 acres. So it's really hard to do a sculpture tour to get, there's 75 sculptures now. So it's just a huge amount of space. So even when we've done an Arboretum sculpture tour with Fred a number of times. We just do a selection because you can't, it's too much. It would take too long. It would be a whole day to walk to each one.
Do you know if they still produce the book?
I'm sorry?
You know if they still produce the book?
No, it's out of print and we only have a few copies.
I did one of my tours with Fred and he did the Arboretum and then some of the statues with the tea, tulip and tree tour.
Yes. Yeah.
That's coming up. And I had mentioned to the lady that was walking around with us, there should be a book, and she never mentioned one. But I said, if there was, I would definitely buy it and put it on, with because that would have to be one hell of a cool book to showcase our school.
I don't know if I have a digital version of it. I was going to say.
Do you know the name of it? I'll look at see if I can find it through one of the. Do you recall its name, or would it just be under Hofstra? I'm sorry. You
No,
can always
I'm
email
trying
it to me.
I'm trying to remember if it had a specific, Susan, I can email you.
Yeah,
I can email you with that because I'm not sure. I'm going to make myself a note right now. Book. I think it was around it was 90 or 91 or something
Okay.
like that. But I can find out and I can email you that
yeah,
information.
please.
That way you can, I don't know if you'll be able to find it anywhere because I don't think it was that,
Somebody will have a copy.
we only have a handful of copies ourselves, so
Right.
yeah. We don't have a whole bunch of them, but it was a project that we did with the Arboretum, and it was based, it opened in the middle, there was a map
Mhm.
that was where all the sculptures were,
Right.
and then it walked you through, where the sculpture was, what the tree was next to it, that kind of thing. Yeah. So exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And my
But
son,
it was a major project at the time.
yeah, I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
Was my son did, I'm going to say his sophomore year with GIS. He walked around and had to find all the statues and download it and put it on a map, showing the different layouts. And then he got upset when they started moving some of the statues. He goes, well, I have to go back in and fix my map. It wasn't upset. He just was like, okay, I have another job to do.
Yeah.
But very cool. I thank you again for hosting us.
You're welcome. I'm glad you could join us.
Oh, love this stuff. Have a wonderful, and I will see you on the 14th.
Okay. I'll see you then.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, everybody, for joining me.
Thanks, Karen.
And
Bye, Anne Marie.
Bye, Sue.